A neurologist was just fired for, and the crazy part is a lot of people they're not saying that they think he should die, but when people say, oh, he reaped what he sowed, somehow that's wrong. And the crazy part about it is saying that you reap what you sow is actually from the Bible. As a former evangelical, you reap what you sow. What the Bible says is what a man measures out, it will measure back to him. So therefore, is there something really wrong with saying that, well, how you live, that has an effect on how people remember you?
First of all, I cover the Washington Post columnist who was fired. If I were her, I'd sue. Can you imagine a major newspaper is firing you for quoting his words? She didn't say anything else. She just quoted his own words. I mean, that's insane. That's an insane standard. And I don't want to make it a race issue. I have a hard time believing they'd fire a white person for that. I really do. A white opinion columnist. But I think she should sue because you're accurately quoting him. And again, he was a public figure, which means you're going to have a legacy.
Welcome back to the channel.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. You wrote an article that on Substack, and I want to share this with everybody and also I'll be putting it into the putting in the chat for everybody. But you had an exclusive audio that you shared. Let me enlarge this just a little bit about a migrant in Alligator Alcatraz here in Florida who recounted his what he was doing, what happened to him, as well as other detainees within this ICE immigration detention center. And so can you give us just a 30,000 foot view of what happened and how did you, without releasing your sources, how did you obtain this information? Or who reached out to you initially in order to be able to put this out here? Because I haven't seen this in corporate media.
Yeah, isn't it unfortunate? A lot of what we report doesn't get picked up by corporate media. I wonder why. Yeah, I mean, the spouses of the undocumented immigrants at Alligator Alcatraz have been, recording phone calls, the few phone calls they get with their loved ones who are in there, and sending it to media. So the Miami Herald is one of the few outlets I could say has done a good job down there in Florida. And, we made contacts with quite a few of the spouses, and that's how we got audio, this recording and others we've gotten. One recording, we got a prisoner basically recounting a fellow prisoner basically passing out unconscious and being left there for a half hour by the guards who didn't even know how to check a pulse. Very easily could have died. And in this case, we got audio of them describing basically the guards beating prisoners while they're handcuffed, assaulting, upwards of, 6 to 10 prisoners at a time, and basically groping them. So, the patting down, but kind of touching, the private areas. So it's pretty horrible. And this is out in the open. And the guards, as we've reported and others, many of them don't have any training, no medical training, which is pretty troublesome when you have in this place, it could get up to 85, 90 degrees inside. Obviously, it's in the swamps of Florida. Don't know how to check a pulse. And a lot of them just kind of seem like they are kind of those asshole jocks from high school who just are on a power trip. So there's also been verbal assault, screaming at the prisoners, kind of mocking them, oh, we're going to send you home. But this one in particular is really alarming because it's not only the physical assault, but I would say, sexual assault too, when you're groping prisoners.
Yeah, this is a explosive story, very controversial. In fact, there has been huge job fairs for ICE to employ people, and you look at people say that they want to protect the country, but does protecting the country mean violating human rights of people who are in prison?
Well, at the end of the day, we live in a new Gilded Age, a new economic Hunger Games, as I call it. And ICE now, through Trump, you have, I think, more money has been given to ICE than most other militaries have. And you also have AI replacing people's jobs. You have people working multiple jobs. You have people rationing, as your healthcare horror stories, you know this, people rationing insulin, people rationing medicine, people choosing between medicine and groceries. Bottom line, we're basically kind of in this economic, we're becoming one giant economic corpse. So if you have dangled over you, a $50,000 signing bonus, now they're talking about canceling your student loan debt. So Republicans are fine with canceling student loan debts if it's an ICE agent to terrorize brown people. So I think that, it's easy to judge people who join ICE, but they got to feed their families too. It doesn't, I don't condone it, but still, people have tough choices to make. But it really is becoming, the capitalist order is fucking you economically and then forcing you either to join ICE, the military, or other basically parts of the imperial cog.
Yeah, definitely. I want to share this part of your article as well, because I think this is also, I think this is also important as well. Here it says, for the spokesperson for the Florida Division of Emergency Management denied the prisoner's claims made to his girlfriend, telling Status Coup that they are false and that reports on horrific conditions at Alligator Alcatraz have been repeatedly debunked. And you say, for the record, the same ample reporting about inhumane and unsafe conditions at Alligator Alcatraz have been debunked. Have there been words to you about this happening at other immigration detention centers or facilities elsewhere, not just in Florida, but throughout the country?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've covered the one in New Jersey at Delaney Hall, where there was a prison riot near Newark. A couple prisoners actually escaped for several days. And there was a riot basically because this facility is not up to code. Alligator Alcatraz isn't either. I mean, it was put together in 8 days. They were basically getting like 1.5 meals a day at this facility. They were getting water that had foul smell and taste. The food they were getting was pretty disgusting, even for prison food. And they were being, taunted by the guards there too, to the point and overcrowding at Alligator Alcatraz and this facility in New Jersey. I mean, they're packing these prisoners. I don't call them detainees. Most of them don't have due process. I just call them prisoners. They're packing them like sardines. And also at Alligator Alcatraz, they're spending so much money there, but they're transferring a lot of them to a nearby facility about an hour away, where also you're hearing about heinous conditions, packed like sardines, very bad sanitary conditions, people not getting enough water, food at Alligator Alcatraz and other facilities. We've heard of people being deprived medicine. I mean, whether it's physical, I mean, myself, I have depression. If I don't take my antidepressant, people have opinions. If I don't take it for a month, I get depressed. For some people, they don't take it for a few days. You could have an episode of depression or other mental health issues. So, and then you have diabetes, heart issues. The person I referenced that fainted and was unconscious for a half hour, where they didn't even check his pulse, they were depriving him of his medicine. He had a heart condition going in there. So this is not just Alligator Alcatraz. This is happening. This has happened at facilities all over the country, and you're starting to see more people die. There's older person died at a Miami ICE prison. Somebody died Pompano Beach earlier this year, a Haitian immigrant, a female, and we've seen others die in other prisons. So, and the other part is, I don't even know if we fully know how many people die, because there's no transparency. This person that fainted at Alligator Alcatraz that we broke the story, they just quietly transferred a few days later to El Paso, Texas. I don't even know if he's been deported yet. They're not giving accurate information. And part of the problem for families of prisoners in Alligator Alcatraz and elsewhere, it's very hard to track if they're there or if they've been transferred elsewhere.
Wow.
I didn't even mention they can't even get communications with their lawyers. So their lawyers are having trouble getting access to them on the phone or in-person visitation at Alligator Alcatraz. So this is basically just an extrajudicial black site. I mean, let's just call it what it is. I would compare it to Guantanamo Bay. Some might say, well, they're not being waterboarded. Okay, well, there's been issues in Alligator Alcatraz of being punished, prisoners being punished, being put in what they call the box, which is basically like a 4x4 square outside, leaving them there handcuffed for 4 or 5 hours in the scalding heat and humidity. That's torture. This is happening. And at the same time, Trump and right-wing Republicans, they're selling merchandise. Alligator Alcatraz hats, Alligator Alcatraz beer koozies. You have right-wingers stopping at the government-paid-for Alligator Alcatraz sign for selfies. I mean, I could do an hour on how bad the Democratic Party is, but let's call a spade here. I mean, this is really fascistic stuff, and it's all a mass distraction campaign to distract the masses from what's really the real enemy, which is the corrupt government, Trump, who's basically doing illegal crypto scams while in office to enrich him and his family, and they're trying to basically brainwash a large part of the country to blame, immigrants for their problems.
Yeah. And this, I wanted to share just this one part of what one of the prisoners from the Alligator Alcatraz has said. Guys, if you guys have not got a chance, read the full article. It is very eye-opening. But I just want to read this piece here. He says, so much abuse. Now, this is translated from to English, from Spanish to English. So much abuse, too much abuse. Yesterday in the dining hall, there was so much abuse. They were handcuffed. They stepped on his head. About 6 guards jumped him. They hit us. They kicked us. So much abuse, too much abuse. So much abuse that we're enduring here in the Alligator. Too much abuse, so much abuse here. I can't take it anymore. Where are the human resources? It's unbearable here. Now, in another area, they fell to the floor. I think they fainted. I don't know. They don't even know how to act because they don't know how to revive someone. They didn't know if the person died or not. We are very nervous because we don't know where we are. And I think it's really important to note that this person that is a prisoner at Alligator Alcatraz is Cuban. I think that's really important because a lot of people talk about, well, Cubans have a special way to get here legally. And it's like, no, Trump is trying to repeal all that. And now you have a Cuban national that is here. And some of these guys may be here under resident status, and they're still being taken away. And that could cost them their job. Their families can get worried and not know their whereabouts. And the fact that they're not being able to take in contact with a lawyer, I thought we were a nation of laws. I thought we were a nation of due process.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like it.
No, I mean, this is all just kind of shock and awe and strongman law and order. I mean, Nixon did the same thing, as part of his election. And really, there's no need for most of this. I mean, if they want to call it illegal immigration, which I don't call it that, it's a misdemeanor. And if they actually want to deport these people, well, they're not deporting most of them. Most of the Alligator Alcatraz prisoners have been kept there in some cases for 60 days. Well, I thought this was a swift deportation machine. Most of this is to rally the base, mostly of older white people. There's younger Trump supporters too, but generally older white people who are, feel a certain way about changing demographics in the country, feel their standard of life has backslid. And it's, time-tested method throughout history, dating back to Germany, seize on an economically destitute and desperate people, get them angry, identify an enemy, a target, and whip them up. And that's what's going on here. The reality is most of the people in Alligator Alcatraz, this has been reported by the Miami Herald and other, have no criminal charges against them, have no criminal history. So they're just kind of there. The money that has been spent, I mean, this is a grift and a scam. Ron DeSantis, who obviously has aspirations for 2028, literally, they've handed out no-bid contracts like candy to their donors. You have contractors who have no experience or qualifications to run a prison, are getting hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts to run a prison that, last I checked, was down to 200 prisoners. And they don't have any, as far as I know, they don't even have full medical team on site. They don't have running water. They don't have full plumbing. The amount of money that's being spent just to transport prisoners to the hospital and back. I mean, so much money is going to be wasted. And you in Florida, hate to say it, you're on the hook. FEMA's not paying for this. DeSantis said FEMA was paying for it. I don't even, from what I know, DeSantis hasn't even put in for reimbursement yet. And if FEMA does end up paying for it, legally, it might get shut down. Because if FEMA pays for it, then it becomes a government project and you have to do an environmental impact study. So long story short, this is one giant racist boondoggle to rouse up, I believe, a growingly fascistic racist base. But there's no real crime purpose to this. This is not going to change crime in America. And it's certainly not going to make anybody safer.
Right. And just to add a little context for everybody, here in Florida, we have no state income tax. So the money that's being spent is even more scarce when it comes to projects like this. So that money that could be going towards other projects to help Floridians is not helping us. On top of the bonds, that the billions of dollars of bonds that we give to Israel every single year, that plus Alligator Alcatraz, and then the money that's constantly being given to real estate developers as well as different big corporations here in Florida. This is really a corporate parasite's paradise. That's what we see here. Your story also reminded me something that was in the news last year. I'm not sure if you remember. You probably do remember. But this was egregious too. And people would go, the government would never do that. Yes, they would. Let me share this. This is a story from last year. It says, ICE subjected immigrants in detention to unnecessary surgeries, report finds. It says, so it says the report found that ICE improperly authorized 32% of major surgeries performed on individuals in ICE detention without having gone through proper procedure first. During ICE improper authorization, OIG audit could not verify whether the surgeries were medically necessary. The report also suggests that the forced hysterectomies performed by medical staff to women detained in the Irwin Detention Center in Georgia were not isolated incidents. They were doing forced hysterectomies. They were sterilizing women just because they were undocumented immigrants in this country. So when people go, oh my goodness, that's not so bad. And here's my question to the people who have family that have, especially family members that are incarcerated, especially if they're non-violent offenders. Let me ask you this question. If you had any knowledge of your family member going through this, if you would have outrage over that, but you don't have outrage over how these people are being treated inhumanely, you're a hypocrite. Because they're being detained. I don't care if they're American. I don't care if they are Salvadorian, Venezuelan, Mexican, Ecuadorian. I don't care. Human rights are human rights across the board all over this planet. And the crazy part is people look another direction based on their immigration status or based on the color of their skin. I'm like, what is this?
Well, I also think a lot of people don't. Well, I think people realize it, but specifically right-wingers who are eating this up. I mean, this is big business. I mean, we already know about private prisons, but Trump's ICE invasion and, basically doubling down on these ICE raids and this and that, building this Alligator Alcatraz in 8 days has been big business for contractors. Now they're talking about building a new complex in northern Florida. They're talking about building similar Alligator Alcatrazes, for example, there's been lawmakers in Montana talking about like a bear Alcatraz in the woods. I mean, it's obviously like medieval times, cruelty is the point. But the actual construction of these prisons is big business for contractors, donors, politicians. So again, it's follow the money. A lot of this is about enriching donors, contractors, politicians who get kickbacks on the other end. I mean, I'll bring it back to Flint, which I've been covering for a decade. A lot of people don't realize the Flint water poisoning was based on a privatization scam to build a completely unnecessary new water system, which no bid contracts were handed out to that. So there's the morality part of it, which you and I are in lockstep. But there's also basically Trump and Democrats have been doing this forever too. They're building an economy based on wars we don't need, prisons we don't need, immigration terrorism we don't need, and now AI that I definitely think we don't need and is going to create a whole new generation of unemployed people and probably more violence. So it's a scam. It's a boondoggle. I don't know what other way to put it. And also, at the end of the day, if they actually care about profits, it's kind of fucking the U.S. economy. I mean, we've lived in a new Gilded Age for a long time anyway, but I mean, there's been plenty of reports. Farmers are struggling. They can't get their workers to come because they're afraid of being rounded up. You just saw at this plant in Georgia, the South Korean workers got rounded up, hundreds of them. There are whole industries where people are, really suffering because they can't get their workers to show up, or their workers are being rounded up and deported. So it's a really bad situation. And I fear that the violence we saw last week with Charlie Kirk, the violence we saw allegedly with Luigi Mangione, if this continues, at the same time cutting people's Medicaid, food programs, youth programs, they're trying to privatize Medicare, you're going to see more violence in this country.
Definitely. Thank you very much for that. You mentioned Luigi Mangione. There was a recent report that just came out that the judge made a statement. If you can give us an update on what's going on with Luigi Mangione, I'd really appreciate it right now. We need some decent news.
Yeah, I was just there actually this morning. He was back in court for the New York case against him. There's three. The federal case where the Trump administration is seeking the death penalty, which is highly unusual. I mean, there's been mass shooters who killed 20 people who did not get the death penalty. They're seeking the death penalty. This was the New York State case against him. And his supporters celebrated because the judge dropped the terrorism charge against him. So there's still, murder charges against him and other charges, but at the very least, the terrorism charge has been dropped. Even, pretty conservative lawyers from the beginning have said this is an overreach. Like in New York, terrorism is usually charged for like serial killers or cop killers. I mean, this was a guy who allegedly just did a targeted shooting. If you're going to charge him with terrorism, you pretty much have to charge anyone who shoots anybody. So that was dropped today. We were there. I was live. So that there was a celebration among his supporters. But right now it's kind of in the pretrial stage. There's been a back and forth because the federal prosecutors accidentally obtained 120 pages of his private medical records, which is all sorts of HIPAA violations.
Yeah.
They claim they didn't look, which, I have a bridge to sell you if you believe that.
I didn't inhale, right?
Yeah. They also accidentally eavesdropped on his conversations with his lawyers. So there's a lot of things that if he's convicted, they have a pretty good grounds on appeal for a lot of the things that have happened. But it looks like the trial dates haven't been set, but it looks like his trials will begin in early 2026. My guess is the federal case will go first because Trump has a real, boner. Sorry for my crudeness, for the death penalty. He has instructed Pam Bondi to go back to cases that Biden administration did not seek the death penalty and basically to reverse that. In Mangione's case, it was very unprecedented. Usually it takes about a year for the DOJ to make a decision on death penalty. I mean, they did that in a few months when it came to Mangione, even before he had been federally indicted. They announced that they were going to seek the death penalty. So trials will begin next year. But I think, what's disappointing from a journalistic point of view for me is when this happened, the killing of the United Healthcare CEO. I've been doing this for about a decade, going across the country. It was really the first story I've seen where the left and the right were in lockstep. There was mass agreement. I mean, I remember Ben Shapiro was attacking Luigi Mangione, and even his supporters were like, nah, you're wrong on this, Ben. People have nuanced views. Some people didn't support what he did, but or allegedly did, but said they're not losing sleep over the victim here, the United Healthcare CEO. But for the most part, I saw left, right, libertarian agreement that we have a predatory, murderous, for-profit health insurance system that needs to change. But as the months have gone on, the media attention has dissipated. We've moved on to other things. We're seeing the division widen now between left and right. But I'm hoping when the trial starts, the attention will come back to, we have a really, really predatory, I think, mafioso-esque health insurance system. I mean, the mafia is basically built on unnecessary middlemen that enrich, garbage men and sanitation workers and construction workers. I mean, the for-profit health insurance industry is a Byzantine maze of unnecessary middlemen. So I hope that will become more of the story. And based on some of the court motions Mangione's lawyers have filed, because I've covered, each motion on Status Quo's channel, it seems like they're going to put the for-profit health insurance industry on trial as part of their defense. In their court motions, they've pointed out the immoral nature of for-profit healthcare, how it, denies people care that they should deserve. So the government should be careful, what they ask for, because I think the health insurance industry is going to be on trial here too.
Yeah, because I'm blanking on the exact number, but I know among Democrats, Medicare for all was somewhere north of between like 87 and 89% among rank and file Democrats. Among independents, it was somewhere close to over 60%. And then even with Republicans, it was hovering around 50% of Republicans, maybe a little bit under, maybe a little bit over. But to be honest with you, just the general public actually wants a universal healthcare system. And when Luigi Mangione allegedly did what he did, I have to say allegedly, because the thing is, we don't even know if he's the actual person who did it. But when that happened, when Brian Thompson got whacked, a lot of people were like, chicken's coming home to roost. And so that scared the pants off of the predator class. They were like, oh my gosh, they hate us this much? And we're like, no shit, Sherlock, what the hell do you think we've been talking about for the last 10, 15 years?
Right.
And, man, and that's why, I'm happy that this is a small victory for somebody like Luigi Mangione. But at the same time, this battle still continues to keep going, especially as far as healthcare is concerned.
I'll also point out, most Americans can't see beyond, the next day in front of them.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you got AI is now replacing jobs. AI CEOs are saying we're going to have 10 to 20% unemployment over the next 5 years. I think it's going to be a lot worse than 10 to 20%. At the same time, they're cutting Medicaid. So if you have a system where your jobs are tied to your employment and more people are going to lose their jobs, or at the very least, employers are going to bump you from full-time to freelance and part-time so they don't have to pay your health insurance, and the safety net is being cut, what the hell are people supposed to do? Nobody could really afford Obamacare. That's a joke. No. And if you don't have a job, or at least full-time work, and you can't get Medicaid, when people have nothing else to lose, what do you get? Violence. So I think chickens are going to come home to roost even more. I mean, I'm not calling for violence, but I understand it. I do. I understand why people get to that point when they feel like, they've said peacefully protest, vote. Well, people have been doing that for a long time, and it's not really getting people anywhere. The income gap is widening, this and that, but I don't think people realize, and part of it is because these platforms, including YouTube, suppress stories on AI. But AI is really, they're trying to, put some pixie dust over it. Well, it could cure cancer. Okay, well, if it cures cancer, how's that going to be helpful if you can't afford the treatment, if you don't have health care? I mean, so for the benefits of AI, I think there's a lot more negatives. And I think we're going to have a lot more people without health care. And what that leads to is pretty worrisome.
Yeah, especially. And another thing that I think is important to discuss is speaking of healthcare. We got to talk about also the healthcare of people that have been damaged by our own government. I covered this about a week and a half ago, but this was actually news that happened in St. Louis, Missouri. And I just want to cover just a little bit of it and get your thoughts. But it talked about the government poisoning the city of St. Louis. And so I just want to share this really quick for a couple minutes, and then we'll talk on the other side.
Exclusive investigation into a secret government experiment that was carried out in St. Louis. Residents tell us they still remember a mysterious fog. Children would run through it. Mothers would try and close their windows against it. For decades, they all had questions, and now we're seeking answers. The United States Army now admits that it sprayed a chemical that contained cadmium, a known carcinogen, on a neighborhood of more than 10,000 people. Critics say this was done with no warning and no consent. Well, tonight we return to the site of that demolished neighborhood and speak with former residents who believe the government turned them into human test subjects. Although the Army admits that the test happened, it is not admitted to harming the residents. News Nation's Natasha Zuvez investigates what was in the fog and why the truth may still be buried.
The fog drifted through the streets like a ghost.
That's exactly what it looked like, a thick fog.
It was summertime and it was hot. We would just run through it as fast as we could and try to just cool ourselves off. It stuck to you.
The spray was so foul as far as the odor. It made some of us have headaches, nausea, dizziness.
That's what I remember. It made me sick.
It wasn't the weather. It was an eerie smoke descending from rooftops, rolling from the backs of trucks.
Regular flatbed truck, but it had a big machine on the back. And it had a big nozzle that really sprayed a fog you couldn't even see through. It was that thick. And it really, we felt it as it adhered to our skin. And as far as the guys on top of the buildings, they tried to portray them to us as maintenance workers. But we was like, what is a maintenance worker doing? And basically a hazmat suit. And they had masks and goggles.
In the 1950s.
So I would like to get your thoughts on this, because you have been to not only Flint, Michigan, you've also been also to East Palestine, Ohio, where through corporate power and mixing with government power, the people have been poisoned. They have been lacking water. And so I just want to get your initial thoughts on this coming from what the U.S. Army did to the people in St. Louis.
Yeah, it actually brought me back. In 2016, I covered a story in St. Louis about Manhattan Project nuclear waste that had been improperly sealed. We have nuclear waste in many landfills all over the country that's literally leaking out. I mean, this was pre-COVID. I saw kids wearing masks outside in this neighborhood because it smelled so bad. And of course, the government said, nothing to see here. You can't prove it's coming from that. So this doesn't surprise me at all. And this is another thing we cover at Status Quo a lot that most people don't know about and most news channels don't cover. We're just becoming one giant land of corporate sacrifice zones.
Yeah.
I mean, that might sound dramatic, but in the buildup, in the industrial buildup of this country, which happened before the EPA was a thing, and even within EPA, it's mostly been purchased by special interests, the EPA, and seized by special interests. You have so much industry, including the U.S. military. I mean, basically just dumping their shit, in this case, spraying toxic shit for whatever reason. You also have the military, what they did in Red Hill in Hawaii, storing diesel fuel right over the aquifer that poisoned Hawaiians. That was only recently exposed, and the military's been lying about it for years. I think Abby Martin's new documentary coming out, I believe in a month or two, is going to focus on that, Red Hill, in addition to other things. But there are so many communities in this country, and some that don't even know about it, with high cancer rates because corporations have been dumping their shit through the air, the water, the soil for years. So many kids that have been born with learning disabilities or other more severe issues from environmental corporate pollution, and the politicians look the other way. because they get bribes from the corporations. Hell, I don't even know if you know about this. We're covering, there was just a massive oil plant explosion in Louisiana. Literally, they have schools open a mile away where kids are still in school with oil residue all over the school, on the windows, on the AC units. So oil residue might be inside the AC units pumping into the school. Kids are tracking oil in and out of the school. The soot and ash is contaminated. A mother told me she dropped off her kid the first day. The parking lot stunk so bad, and a school staff member was saying how nauseous they were. This kind of shit is happening all over the country. You mentioned East Palestine. The cancer. I said, hey, there's a reason Norfolk Southern settled within a year, which is unheard of for a company, a multi-billion-dollar company, to settle that quick, because they want to get out now for the lowest amount before the cancer diagnosis is raised. Well, guess what? Now the cancer diagnoses are starting to grow by the day. Sadly, a lot of people I know and have interviewed now don't have a lot of time left. And this is all happening because our government, I mean, how can it be that you literally have explosions, fires, railroads detonating, military spraying communities, plastics factories having fires, refineries blowing up. And every time you get the same thing. Oh, a 1 mile evacuation zone. The EPA says we did some testing. Everything's fine. Come home. First off, how does the chemicals stop at just an invisible wall in the sky after a mile? That's always been absurd. East Palestine, I've talked to toxicologists, that railroad detonation, that went as far as 8 states, including Canada. I had people as far as Maine messaging me they had health symptoms and shit was falling from the sky from the East Palestine railroad detonation. So basically, we are becoming one toxic dump. Even before Trump, the EPA regulations were laughable in this country. Most of these incidents, you have explosions, fires, and this and that. You learn that the companies where you had the incident had safety violations. They just had to pay a fine. And a lot in, I'd say 8 out of 10 incidents, it's happening in Black, brown, indigenous communities, and now more poor white communities because they're not putting these industries and plants in Beverly Hills. So,
and I just want to point out as well, to add to your point, is that a lot of these chemicals are affecting children, and from the people who say they care about kids. If you care about kids, then why are you allowing the deregulation of these corporations to affect our children? And for instance, because you've been to Flint, Michigan many times, the lead that's in the water. Do you know what lead does to a child's brain? It inhibits the prefrontal cortex, which is there for judgment and as well as impulse control. And so when you impair that, what ends up happening is that you have kids that become angry, they lack impulse control, and they become disruptive in school, and they become disruptive adults. And this happens, and then people look at, and particularly unfortunately, because a lot of times this happens in the Black communities, they'll look at us and go, oh, well, see, Black people, they're just inherently violent. When it's not that, it's that they're poisoning us, and then our bodies react the natural way if you did it to anybody else of any other race or nationality. And the problem is, it's not us, it's the corporations that are putting these chemicals in our air, in our food, in our water. And the crazy part is some people just want to look past it and say, oh, well, it's you, when it's not us, it is the system itself.
And the reality is 9 out of 10 times, the politicians who could do something about it don't live in these communities. So they're far removed. They show up. They show up for a photo. They show up for a photo op. They show up for an anniversary, whether it's Flint or other things. Speaking of Flint, teen suicides are on the rise in Flint 11 years after that, because those teenagers were children when their brains were damaged. And depression, anxiety, PTSD, impulse control come with having brain damage from lead. And those kids didn't get Medicare for all. Their mental health services are not adequate for what was done to them. I mean, it's just, at the end of the day, all of these cascading things we're talking about, I think we're headed towards dark times in this country. And I tell the audience, you know, when I'm talking about East Palestine or Flint or name your corporate sacrifice zone, I think a lot of time, just as humans, we look at it and we say, you know, that's sad and that sucks and I'm angry about it, but you feel like you're removed from it because it's not happening near you.
Thank you.
It's the truth is it's not really when, it's not if anymore, it's when it's going to happen by you, because these, I've been keeping track. We're having another kind of explosion, environmental disaster, train derailment, plant explosions, plant fires every other week in this country, all over the place. We've covered a lithium battery fire in Central California that has poisoned what they call the salad bowl of America. Car batteries went on fire, and around that plant, 70% of our vegetables are produced in the farms in Central California. Most Americans don't even know about it, and residents are sick as far as 50 miles away. They didn't think it was going to happen to them. The folks of East Palestine and Western Pennsylvania, by the way, those residents got it too, that dark plume. They didn't think it was going to happen to them. Folks in Conyers, Georgia, you had a factory fire that it was like pool spa treatments. There was chlorine gas in the air, which was outlawed after World War I. They didn't think it was happening to them. I could go down the list, but there's the Louisiana plant explosion that just happened. When you basically have zero regulation in this country, or companies that don't follow regulation and just pay a fine, when there's no criminal penalties for being reckless, you're going to have a lot of sick people, which then is going to lead to more violence.
Wow. That's an ongoing story we need to keep up with.
And I'll also say, not to get on my soapbox, but part of the problem is these algorithms, because these stories, which I think are vitally important, and life or death, they get suppressed on YouTube, on Twitter, TikTok, you name it, in favor of, you know, this channel's fighting with this channel, or what Joe Rogan said, or the Charlie Kirk aftermath, and like life or death issues, like explosions, people being sick. People say to me, Jordan, people just aren't into that. It's not that they're not into it or they don't care. They're not seeing it because it's not in their algorithm. It's not recommended to them. It's not in their feed. I can't tell you how many times when, for whatever reason, people find my channel, the common response in the comments is, why did I never see this channel in my feed? And why is no one else covering this? I have people in those communities, okay, where these things are happening saying, I live 20 minutes away from here. I didn't even hear about it on the local news.
This is why independent media is so important. Speaking of which, I want to move on, and we just talked about the algorithm. But in the wake of Charlie Kirk's being murdered, there is something brewing, because a lot of people are talking about the reactions of people being unfavorable towards Charlie Kirk. I can say what I could say about, you know, his views regarding me and my personal identity, but the thing is that this has reached to the upper levels of institutions and governments. And I want to talk to you about censorship, because while we talk about the algorithm and where it gears the eyes of citizens towards, also now, if you have a specific opinion, it shows that now the government is going to come after you. And I want to share this as well, because this was actually Attorney General Pam Bondi, where she's speaking about this issue here. This is from the Kate Miller podcast that she's on.
There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people, so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle. There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people, so we show them that some action is better than no action?
So Is there a fine line that they're crossing, or is this? What do you make of this?
Well, first off, it's pretty alarming that the top lawyer in America doesn't know that hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. I mean, it is. Certain hate speech that invokes violence or, is not. But I mean, at the end of the day, the Westboro Baptist Church, very controversial. Those are the people who go and basically, taunt family members at funerals. That's hateful. People have called for those folks to be arrested for years, to be blocked from doing that, but they've been allowed to do it because it's free speech, even though it's hate speech. So the Attorney General saying there's a difference between free speech and hate speech, not according to the First Amendment. There's not. And frankly, by her own shifting goalposts, and most of the right-wing people who are hysterical right now, I mean, let's call it what it is. Charlie Kirk called George Floyd a scumbag after he was lynched, basically. That's hate speech, if you ask me. Should he have been fired then? And by the way, they've been, under the overall response and obituary to Charlie Kirk, the right wing is saying he was a free speech warrior. He believed in more debate. So wouldn't the answer to the people who are criticizing him or cheering his murder, which I've been clear, I'm not doing that. I don't think we should be targeting or politically violent towards anyone. But with that said, wouldn't the response in honor of Charlie be, let's debate these folks who are cheering it? Let's ask them why they're cheering it. It just seems to me they certainly have selective passion for free speech. They certainly have selective passion for cancel culture. And I mean, Trump, when a Democratic lawmaker in Minnesota was assassinated a few months ago, he didn't even call the governor. He didn't lower the flags at half mast. So it just seems to me they are using this. I mean, before the suspect was even caught, they were blaming it on the far left, whatever that means. So it just seems to me this is part of a psychops from the Republican Party, which, by the way, they've been doing for 30 years now, to find another, to distract their base. First it was the Tea Party, then it became MAGA, from the fact that they're screwing you economically 7 ways to Sunday. They're screwing your healthcare. They're screwing you on education. They're screwing you on housing. They're screwing you on, go down the list, the war machine, and to basically distract you by blaming the other. And, Charlie Kirk, he was a public figure. So you kind of, regardless of how you died, and in this case, it's horrible, you're going to have, you're open to whatever people think of your legacy. And in this case, a large part of the country thinks he was a vile man. I happen to think that. I think it's vile how he died, but I don't think you get to whitewash or tone police people how they react to that. And it should be accurately, people can have their opinion. If right-wingers want to have ceremonies and statues, have at it. But they're basically trying to create a crusade, I think, change the subject from Trump's big, beautiful bank robbery, the bill that cut Medicaid, food programs, youth programs, change the subject from the fact that Trump, who's ran anti-establishment, literally handed the keys to the government to the world's richest man, unelected, who then stole our Social Security data, among other crimes, Elon Musk. Change the subject from the fact that Trump, I believe, is implicated in some kind of way with Jeffrey Epstein. And change the subject from the fact that the economy is in the shitter. And just kind of create a culture war on steroids, which is kind of how Charlie Kirk became a millionaire, based on the culture war, which is dangerous because, frankly, first it's tone policing, trying to get fired, and that anyone who is deemed as not mourning him sufficiently or deemed as celebrating him. But then it becomes doing that to people based on not somebody that was murdered but other supposed societal sins. So I think it's really dangerous times. And I'll tell you, I'm not as big of a figure as Charlie Kirk was in terms of like being nationally known, but it definitely makes you pause in terms of being out there, particularly, on the ground reporting. What happens if I piss somebody off? They're for the violence that they are condemning, they're certainly ginning up their base to be violent, if you ask me.
Absolutely. And in fact, I want to share this too, because if you're willing to fire somebody over saying something that's hateful, then at this, Brian Kilmeade of Fox News should also be fired for this.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get?
He said involuntary lethal injection or just kill them.
And by the way, that's not even the most objectionable thing he said on Fox News in 30 years, but that's pretty horrific. Yeah. No, I mean, I think he apologized, but still, I mean, MSNBC just fired a commentator who on the day Kirk was shot basically said, he reaped what he sowed. Not like saying he should have been shot, but like he was one of the most divisive people. It was a true statement, and he was fired. So you have it on both sides. You have the liberals basically, going too far to try and satisfy the right wing and, basically fire people that shouldn't be fired. And then you have people basically saying, just kill homeless people. Just give an apology and move on. I mean, it's heinous. And the reality is, when you have economic conditions that we've already talked about, AI replacing jobs, people working more than one job, people rationing things, making tough choices, and then you're basically stoking, Elon Musk says we either fight or we die. He said that to a far right protest in the UK over the weekend. And he's saying it on Twitter, fight or die. You are giving the bat signal out to unstable people or even stable people that are shifting into more unstable to become more violent against an imaginary enemy. There's no like far left, radical left. Most Antifa protests I've covered, if there's any violence, it's burning shit. And by the way, I've seen more protests where cops literally burn cars to then blame it on the protesters. I saw that at Standing Rock all the time when I covered Standing Rock in North Dakota. So basically, the problem is, getting back to Luigi, that was the first time I saw the left and right kind of coming together in agreement over something. And that was, I was hopeful after that. UAW strike in 2023, you saw right-wingers supporting the union. This, I believe, is to kind of go the other way and create more of a division, create more of a fissure around a culture war, and basically create enemy lines when actually, if you got us all in a room on both sides of the political spectrum, even progressives and liberals, like the MSNBC, vote blue no matter who, if you went issue by issue, there's a lot of agreement on many things. It's just we're being tribalized and radicalized in so many different directions. And the reality is, I mean, Charlie Kirk, I feel for his kids, his wife, but he was a Christian nationalist. I mean, that's the truth. He prayed, he weaponized the other. He focused on transgender, Black Lives Matter, immigrants, abortion, you name it, and ignoring the real corruption in this country. And I think that, honestly, I just feel we're kind of we're at a real tipping point right now, and a powder keg, and it's going to get a lot worse if Trump and his minions continue to weaponize this.
I think that, and this is also adding to your point as far as the left and the right uniting, there was becoming a uniting around the issue regarding Israel and Gaza as well.
Yeah.
There was a huge undertaking that was happening, even to the point where Charlie Kirk was starting to question the motivations of Israel themselves. And I think part of it was because of the influence of his friend Candace Owens, how she was questioning Israel, and it caused Charlie Kirk to start to question, well, wait a minute, what is Israel's role here in the United States? And so now he's gone. And it was just revealed that there was a big argument between him and billionaire Bill Ackman. It was Max Blumenthal, the Gray Zone, that was talking about how he was in a big argument with Bill Ackman. And that was I think that was the day before. And Bill Ackman called him out. And so, and then the stories don't add up about Charlie Kirk's murder. There's a lot of indiscrepancies. And so it feels like the quote that says, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And I think
That's
this is one of
exactly.
those things.
Well, also, I mean, let's just be honest. Zoran Mamdani won the Democratic nomination by the Democratic Party's own hysteria, 2016, 2020, screaming at everyone else to fall in line, unite. Why is it that the Democratic Party leadership still hasn't endorsed him? Hell, it took the governor until yesterday of New York to endorse him. Why? Because their AIPAC donors are telling them not to.
Yeah.
A lot of it goes back to Israel. I call it the United States of Israel often, because at the end of the day, whatever Mamdani has said, or he's too sympathetic to the Palestinians, a lot of the most powerful donors in America, and I'm Jewish, I don't think it's anti-Semitic to say it, but it's a fact, are Jewish, or they're not Jewish, but they're Zionists, whatever the case may be. I mean, Trump, most of what he's done that has been pro-Israel is because he got hundreds of millions of dollars from the Adelsons. Sheldon Adelson before he died, and now his widow, Miriam Adelson. That's why he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That's why he's basically said to Netanyahu, do whatever the hell you want, continue this genocide. So there is a lot of power and influence, financial influence being exerted over politicians to look the other way, and including the Democratic Party. They don't get a pass either. They initiated the genocide with the blank check. Trump has continued it. But yeah, it's a bad situation. And you kind of, I mean, I've seen it get worse because I've had the benefit of going around the country. I covered 2016 on the ground, 2020. And in 2016, I think Trump's base, you know, there was racist parts. There was kind of dark elements. But for the most part, it seemed more like just they liked the pro wrestling of it all. You know, Trump's showmanship and, you know, and there was a bit of a carnival clown aspect to it. Then come 2020, it became a lot darker. It was no longer like a clown show to me watching it. It was more like, you know, I wasn't alive during the 1930s and 40s, but from what I've studied, I see some elements here. Even the music that was being played at rallies and the imagery, and obviously we know what happened on January 6th. So it's really escalated over the Trump decade. And it's not all on Trump, but I'd say a lot of it is because I think that he has basically, I think, blessed and given people license to want fascism, to want autocracy. That's not all right-wingers, but a lot of them. And until we realize our enemy is not transgender people, immigrants, you know, pro-choice people, black people, the enemy, our government is corrupt. They've been purchased, the right wingers and the left wingers. And you could have differences on cultural stuff, but, you know, they've convinced a large portion of the country the biggest problem is, you know, transgender men swimming in sports. Whatever you think about that is irrelevant. Like, no, the biggest problem is we live in an economic Hunger Games and the masses are beginning to starve. That's the biggest problem. And the politicians on both sides have created those conditions. And, you know, Charlie Kirk, you know, they are the Republican. I always thought it was laughable. You had some YouTubers who claimed to be left saying Trump was more pro-free speech or anti-war than Democrats. I said, they're all fucking anti-free speech. All of them.
They are, yeah.
Trump, you know, free speech. This is a party that's trying to ban books in your state. This is a party that's trying to legalize, allow you to run somebody over and not be charged with a crime, run over protesters. They did that in Florida, that bill. They did that in Louisiana. This is a party that's trying to deport pro-Palestinian protesters, including U.S. citizens. They're not for free speech. They're for free speech if they agree with it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and just one more thing before I let you go as well. Look, this is what happened to a Washington Post journalist. It says Karen Ataya, the last Black full-time opinion columnist at the Washington Post, says she was fired. And here's her. She says, my only direct reference to Kirk was one post. She said, Black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. You have to go steal a white person's slot. Charlie Kirk. She basically quoted Charlie Kirk. And she says, my commentary received thoughtful engagement across platform support and virtually no public backlash. And yet the Post accused my measured blue sky posts of being unacceptable, gross misconduct, and of endangering the physical safety of colleagues charges without evidence, which I reject completely as false. She continues, says, though they rushed to fire me without even a conversation. This was not only a hasty overreach, but a violation of the very standards of journalistic fairness and rigor the Post claims to uphold. So this isn't just a one-off. There are videos of many people who have actually lost their jobs, lost their positions. I just watched a TikTok video of a young lady who she lost her position. And these are people who are in positions that they thought that nothing like that would happen to them, because largely the company that they work for is fairly liberal. But scratch a liberal and the fascist bleeds, right? And so this is exactly what's happening across the board. And there's one more tweet that I want to share. And this is from Eric Daughtry, who basically is applauding the firing of people. Eric Daughtry says, great news, the University of Miami's neurologist, Michelle Bravo, has been fired for justifying Charlie Kirk's assassination. He said, not in Florida. So a neurologist was just fired for, and the crazy part is a lot of people they're not saying that they think he should die, but when people say, oh, he reaped what he sowed, somehow that's wrong. And the crazy part about it is saying that you reap what you sow is actually from the Bible. As a former evangelical, you reap what you sow. What the Bible says is what a man measures out, it will measure back to him. So therefore, is there something really wrong with saying that, well, how you live, that has an effect on how people remember you?
First of all, I cover the Washington Post columnist who was fired. If I were her, I'd sue. Can you imagine a major newspaper is firing you for quoting his words? She didn't say anything else. She just quoted his own words. I mean, that's insane. That's an insane standard. And I don't want to make it a race issue. I have a hard time believing they'd fire a white person for that. I really do. A white opinion columnist. But I think she should sue because you're accurately quoting him. And again, he was a public figure, which means you're going to have a legacy no matter how you die, even in the worst circumstances, which I didn't see her or a lot of these people being fired. A lot of them have not celebrated. They basically quoted his own statements, pointed out his statements on, he said something about, a certain amount of gun deaths are acceptable to uphold the Second Amendment. So you can't quote somebody. It's just unbelievable. I didn't see the right wing doing this over people celebrating the death of the United Healthcare CEO. They weren't, trying to get them fired, this and that. Seems to me by their standard, that would be equally as reprehensible. It seems that it's because you're quote unquote attacking somebody on our side, on our team. And that's the problem with all of it. Corporate media, a lot of independent media is just tribal sports. It's put on your blue hat, put on your red hat, which means selective outrage on all sides. And that's why, listen, Status Coup could have grown a lot faster if I would have just chose to either do 100 anti-Trump videos a week or, 100, Democrats or Lucifer videos. When you call them all corrupt or you cover substantive stories, you grow less quick because the algorithm doesn't favor that. But I think it's more of a service to tell people the truth, which is the only real color that matters in this country. It's not red or blue. It's green. It's green. And that's what's going on. And unfortunately, I think, I don't think this Charlie Kirk thing's going away. And I also think there's other unstable people like this shooter that right now are being radicalized by this right-wing crusade against the radical left. So there's going to be more violence, unfortunately. And I hope I'm wrong, but that's where I see things going.
Yeah, same here. Jordan, thank you so very much for this reporting. This desperately necessary. And if you can let people know, what projects do you have coming up next and where people can find you?
Yeah, folks, if you don't know, Status Coup on YouTube, Status COUP. We are, as far as I know, the only independent outlet that's consistently out there covering, from the corporate sacrifice zones to Luigi Mangione's case to Flint. We were just in Washington, D.C. covering Trump's invasion of D.C. with the National Guard. We might go to Chicago next because he's hinting at sending the National Guard there, or Memphis because he's hinting at sending the National Guard there. We are currently working on follow-ups regarding East Palestine, the unnecessary Norfolk Southern chemical detonation, which has created a cancer cluster. So we don't just parachute in and out. We stay on stories. I call it, justice journalism, guerrilla journalism. I was just on the ground this morning covering Luigi's court case and his supporters outside. So, there's a sea of channels. A lot of them I like, doing good commentary. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of independent outlets out there, on the ground doing the reporting. So if you can subscribe, we're almost at 500,000 subscribers, which is taking a lot of work.
Congratulations.
Thank you. More importantly, we're trying to expand. So if you got $5 a month, that's how we fund it. So statuscoup.com/join. And thanks for having me on again.
Thank you so very much. Please don't be a stranger. I always enjoy your reporting. So thank you so very much.
Thanks, Ben. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more, you can look here. 1.